All right, Kiss Army, welcome to the KissFAQ Podcast. Thank you for giving us your time today and letting us into your head. I hope we don't do any damage. This is a Kiss-related podcast by the board, for the board. We hope that you enjoy. Welcome to episode 276 of the KissFAQ Podcast. I'm your host, Julian Gill, admin on the KissFAQ message board. Today I'm joined by Marcus Almighty. Mark.
Greetings.
St. Louis Cardinals. St. Louis.
Wow.
Lonnie, supporter of teams that are losers.
That's my calling card. That's my calling card.
Cardinals fan.
That's my calling card.
And I'm just enjoying myself tremendously. Both my teams are 5-0. You know, Tom Brady, Jimmy G. Yeah, life could be worse. Like, you could be the Cowboys and lose to the Jets.
You're real proud of himself too.
And 69th Blizzard Ken.
Hey.
Good to see you all again. Thank you for being part of the show and being willing to come back week after week after week of my insults and lame attempts at humor. On the upside, I did remember to press record. I don't think there's a whole hell of a lot of Kiss news this past week. One of my other favorite bands has just announced that they're going to dig into the archive. And in 1980, they recorded a live album and never did anything with it. They were going to use some of the songs for an EP, apparently. So Def Leppard is finally going to put out a recording that was, mentioned in the press in 1980 in Melody Makers. So they're digging into the archives, celebrate its 40th anniversary next year, which just makes you think of bands that you'd love to do the same sort of thing who just don't. Instead, sell you more Hello Kitty and perfume and stuff like that. And even with Def Leppard, I'm a little bit annoyed that they should have packaged that up and put it in the freaking box set of vinyl we all just bought. But, beggars can't be choosers. There's also a 1981 show, for which I'm sure will come with a special edition of High and Dry the following year. Okay, but enough about Def Leppard, since that is not the topic of this show. This week we're going to talk about Kiss Alive 2. It's been a couple of years since we'd last dedicated an episode to that album. And October 28th, 24th, 14th, it varies.
Be careful.
Yeah. You're going to make someone mad on social media if you get the date.
That is not the correct date.
Hey, I don't mind correcting everyone. It's nice to be accurate and to have the details and all that. The tone could bring those dials down. Bring the dials down a little bit, because I think people will hear the message more. Lay out all your evidence, because they did a hell of a lot of research in coming up with the actual accurate dates. That most of these albums were released, and it's you just know every February there's going to be a war for the first Kiss album, and in October Creatures and Alive 2 and all that's just going to become a war. Doesn't matter, they were released. We've got them, and today we're going to talk about Alive 2. So let's just go around the table and again do first impressions of the mighty, or not so mighty as the case may be, Kiss Alive 2, and your first memories of hearing that album. And Ken, I'm not going to start with you because you've always got the best story with this one. Lonnie.
Maybe.
I bought Alive 2. My first copy of Alive 2 was on CD, in those big fat double disc things that they had before the remasters. And I always thought, I liked it. I thought it was cool. I immediately could recognize that the crowd noise was really pumped in a whole lot more so than Alive 1. It could really tell, a production difference even as a kid. But I liked the album. It had songs off, decent Showing Off Destroyer, which I really like. Sorry, Mark. And I enjoyed it. And then there was a vinyl store not down the street, maybe a mile or so away from me, that I used to ride my bike to, and they had it on vinyl. The first time, this is probably about 95 or so. I saw it on vinyl for the first time, and I'm at the record store and I open it up and I'm like, oh my gosh! And there's, there's a booklet. I had no idea. I'm 15 years old. I wasn't a kid in the 70s, and I didn't. It was like rediscovering the album all over again. Seeing the booklet, seeing the inner sleeves, seeing the tattoos and the order forms. I'm like, oh, I got to save up my money. I gotta buy this because this is, look at the gatefold instead of just the inner.
Yeah.
The inner of the CD, seeing that the full gatefold was so much more impressive than just the inside of the CD. And it really kind of just brought the album into full effect for me when I saw that for the first time. Had to have it because it's like the best, in my opinion, it's the best done in collector item Kiss album there is. So it's great. I could definitely tell the production, was very different than live, but I enjoy it, and I enjoyed it then, and I still do.
Yeah, for such a shitty front cover, it's really got an impressive gatefold. When you open it up, it's like the front cover is all meh to me with that big ass logo and the four. I mean, it's like, come on, they had some fantastic designers, and that's all they could come up with. But then you open it up, and you're like, wow. Now that's more like it. So I mean, it's like a Playboy centerfold of rock and flame and pyro. So that was, to me, my memory of it. But I bought it on cassette first, and because of the album cover, I didn't buy it early on, but I did buy it because of those 5 new songs. And I immediately put on the second cassette, fast forwarded to get to the second side, and played the new songs. So I didn't give two shits about hearing Alive 2 when it had 5 brand new songs on it. I went straight to those. Probably like a lot of people pulled a record out of the sleeve in 1977, went straight to side 4 or side D, whatever the hell it was called.
Yeah.
So, I was more interested in the new songs. When I did finally listen to the album, it doesn't hold a candle to, Alive. And while I always liked that they didn't replicate or duplicate the songs that they'd had on that first album, it feels so weird as a listening experience that it's awkward and uncomfortable, and it also sounds like shit. I do not like the sonics whatsoever on this album. I much prefer a bootleg from the
Tokyo.
I lost Alive too.
Either and or. I mean, come on, just give me any from the Love Gun Alive 2 tours, and that's basically the same thing, only it's got all those missing songs in, and it sounds a hell of a lot better in most cases. So the Summit usually was the one that I listened to from that. Mark, what about your first memories of it?
Again, the first memory for me with this record has all centered around my older sister. This was that album that I mentioned before that I went up to my sister's friend's place there, and they were listening to it, and they had it all pinned up on their wall, the album cover and stuff like that. And I was totally in awe of this album. And I got to agree with Lonnie. It is definitely the best, piece of collecting merchandise that they had at that point, because I clearly remember those guys coming up to me and saying, hey man, check this out. Look, there's like a booklet in here, and there's tattoos and stuff. And I was all like, wow, what the hell? Like this, I've never seen that before with a record, having all these things in there. And I remember when I first heard it, that audience was really like screechy, especially on this guy's stereo system. He didn't have like the world's greatest hi-fi system, so it was really like, wow, like piercing. But they did end up listening to those other side, because I remember this Thanksgiving that just passed here in Canada, the weekend that passed, we had Thanksgiving here, and I was over on my sister's, and my older sister and I were talking about this, ironically enough, that they were listening to side 4, and one of her older friends there liked it, but this is you can tell these guys are totally like true Canadian blooded people, because as soon as they heard Rockin' in the USA, they kind of went like, Rockin' in the US. Like they were like, they kind of took that like as a jab, like what about us? We made your songs number 1 too, like they took it so personally that it was Rockin' in the USA, no mention of Canada. Meanwhile, I'm just like, oh, these are cool songs. I had no comment about that. I didn't really care, to be honest with you. But it was interesting that Jane, my sister, remembers that comment, that they actually put their nose up a bit. After all, they are French Canadian, so they're a little too they're a little too prideful in their Canadian heritage, let's just say. So, but anyways, they're cool guys. I still see one or two of those guys every once in a blue moon around the old neighborhood, but it's a good record. I think for what it was worth, it kept the band in the spotlight, and everybody was talking about that in school, about those cool tattoos and stuff like that. So it did what it was supposed to do.
We've been to Canada too. There wasn't much to do. Eh?
Wow. Ooh, damn. Jack is home.
All right, Ken. It's again. Your story is well known. Have at it.
All right. Well, 77. Yes, I moved to California, and one of the first friends that I had here, he of course played me. It was probably around April of that year. He played me, Rock and Roll Over, the beginning of that, and I kind of just got hooked right then and there. But I don't think I bought anything right away, obviously, because I waited until Alive 2 came out, and it doesn't matter. I was gonna say, it doesn't matter what day it came out. What matters is I bought it at some point, and you bought it at some point, and all the other people who bought it. That's the key date for me. So yeah, later in the year, I bought it. We rode our bikes again. I've said this story before. We rode our bikes downtown to what was called the Bill's Drugs store. Those drugs. No, I wasn't buying any drugs or anything.
Bill's Drugs, eh?
But they had, all the drugstores back then, they had, and they still do. After a while, they had CDs and stuff like that. But they had vinyl albums, a small selection of them. And we went down there looking through them, and then that's when I saw it. I saw the album. It's like, okay, I know I need to get this. I said, does it have, Calling Dr. Love on it? Yes. I checked that off, and I said, okay, I'm going to get it. And this is the actual album. My
It's
first
still in good
Kiss
shape
album.
for having it when you're a kid.
Yeah, it's still pretty good shape.
Great
Surprisingly, yeah. I took care of my Kiss stuff pretty good. So yeah, and then we proceeded, rode home, and threw it on. I remember, the first thing I did when I came in the front door, I went to my mom and I said, "Hey, we're back. Look what I got." And I showed her. I said, "Look at this. This guy. Look at the blood on it."
She said, "Kiss, the devil's music."
No, and actually,
Ken,
she did.
give me that album.
She just kind of went, "Well, that's nice, Ken," and that was it. She was lenient with my music and things like that. So which was cool. So that's the story, at least for getting it. I actually listened to the album. I didn't know it was pumped in audience, until later on, of course. Back then, I didn't know. I mean, the only other thing live I had at that point, I had Barry Manilow live, which came out the same year. And that had a lot of audience sound in it. But the only difference is they quieted down when he started to sing and play his music, where the Kiss songs, it's just constantly pumping through the whole thing.
Yeah, I know.
The way they did it. But, I really enjoyed the album. I actually like the sound of the album. I mean, yeah, it's not one of the, maybe it doesn't compare to Alive, but it's a lot better than, Alive 3. It's a lot better than that album.
Yeah, you like that one better?
What, Alive 3?
No, you like Alive 2 better than 3?
Oh,
Like sonically wise, I mean?
Sonically, I think it's a lot better. Just to me, to my ears, it's a lot better. And I like the music, and then I gravitated towards, like I said, Calling Dr. Love, Christian 16, and then I started figuring out the other songs, and then, okay, now I'm going to get double platinum, and then I start getting the other albums, and so on. So it just kind of holds a special thing for me because of, it's the first one. It's the thing that really got me started on this Kiss
Beginning
thing.
of the road.
Yeah, beginning of the road.
Yeah.
Right. As we're nearing the end of the road, right?
Yeah, what a way to start a crazy Kiss journey. Some people enter with Alive 2, others enter with Asylum.
Sure.
Yeah. Pretty know which one I would prefer to have entered with, but you know what? Boney M was too popular. Kiss wasn't getting into my world in 1977. So, I mean, when you think about it, we've already talked about some of our negative feelings about this album. What are the positives that you take out of Kiss Alive 2 as a piece of product, as a representation of, Kiss's catalog performed live 1976 and 77, essentially, because there's nothing 75 or earlier on it. Lonnie?
I think it's a good time. I think it's a good signature of what Kiss was about. And so, I don't know, I take that back. It's an okay signature of what Kiss was about in 77, because it does have Tomorrow and Tonight on there, which was never performed live. And I think, and I understand, and it has Hard Luck Woman, which wasn't really live either. And I think that's really a shame that we really kind of jammed those songs in there for the sake of jamming those songs in there, instead of putting something like Take Me on there, which really should have been on there, because that was a staple in the set list at the time. Mm-hmm. And it would have been a better representation of what seeing Kiss in that time was all about. I get it why they didn't put songs off of Alive 1 on there. I mean, think about it. Alive 1, it only came out a year prior to that. I mean, 2 years prior to that. So it's still 2 years. I mean, we haven't had a Kiss album since 2000. We haven't had an official Kiss album since 2012. So, I mean, you think about that. It was only 2 years ago. I mean, and the album's still probably selling halfway decent at that point, and only 2 years later. Do we really want to put songs that are off that one on this one? Well, it may kill Alive 1 if we put up songs from Alive 1 on Alive 2. So I get it. But at the same time, I think putting songs on there that weren't really performed live isn't a good representation of what Kiss was. I think the song selection really could have been a lot better than what it turned out to be.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really fair point. Though I will go back and say that Hard Luck Woman was performed live. Not a whole lot, but at least at least it had been. Tomorrow and Tonight never had been. Got Love for Sale was performed once. Love 'Em and Leave 'Em was performed a few times. Hooligan, Take Me.
Hooligan, Take Me. There you go. Swap out Tomorrow and Tonight and Hard Luck Woman for Hooligan and Take Me. You still have the equal amount of representation off of Rock and Roll Over and Love Gun that you were looking for whatever reason. We had to have equal share of each of the three albums. Fine. But swap out those two, which were played more regularly.
Yeah.
Silly.
Mark, what are your thoughts on it?
Well, I think, again, as a product, I think it's a very positive. I think I remember dozens of people saying that story about when they first get the album, how they, plot themselves on the floor and open up the gatefold and just get themselves lost in that picture, just imagining the concert and being there and listening to the album. I think it's, definitely a moment in people's childhood that's very strong, especially if you're a Kiss fan. But I have to say, though, that the songs, I think, even though they're, not the best sonically sounding, I think the performances of them, though, were pretty decent. I mean, the three songs that come to mind that I really like on here, like, for example, Ladies' Room. I always preferred the live version of Ladies' Room than the one on Rock and Roll Over. I just think that the guitars are a little bit more heavier hitting on the live version, and so I've always liked that version of it better than the studio one. And even, Calling Dr. Love and stuff like that, I thought, the live versions were always fantastic from their concerts, and I think they were lucky that they had a decent version of that as well on the album itself. So I think that it's a good representation of it. I think that the guitar solo section this time was a little bit better, I think, than it was on Alive 1. I think they gave him a little bit more time, I think, than on Alive 1. On Alive 1, it seems like the solo was over and done before I know it. But they did kind of trim Peter Criss's solo down a bit on Live 2 compared to Live 1. So there was a little give and take there. But, the only thing that I had a real issue with, besides the sonics of it and the whole audience thing, was the fact that, like Lonnie said, it's not a real representation of their live show, whereas Alive 1 was more an accurate depiction of a show when you go to see it. I mean, this was just all over the place. I mean, that little thing that you asked us to do with reconstructing the album, I mean, I'd had that in mind when I reconstructed my album this time, too, is that I tried to make it more like an actual live record, because that's the one thing that bugs me about this album.
Yeah, and we'll get to that part of this very shortly. Good thoughts on that, Ken. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, I like the packaging was great. Yeah, the cover could have been a little bit better. Everything else was cool there. As for the songs, yeah, I understand that they, didn't want to release the same songs that were on Alive just 2 years later. Though it's three studio albums worth of music. So they decided, well, we'll make that. Like we did with Alive, it kind of represents the first three. This represents the second three. But the music, yeah, there's songs that they crammed in there. I know we're probably gonna go over some songs that we think probably should be on there, versus maybe not on there. But yeah, I think it's just I had nothing to compare it to. When I bought it, I hadn't heard Alive. Yeah. I hadn't heard really any other Kiss.
What a weird alternative universe you come from.
Yeah.
When I bought it, I hadn't heard Alive. I mean, that just blows my mind.
Yeah, I hadn't heard Alive. So, and this is the first one I got. I mean, yeah, I heard a little bit of probably the first side of Rock and Roll Over before hearing this. But then, and I think I heard Dr. Love on the radio. So. Back then, and even Hard Luck Woman. But then, and Christine 16 actually on the radio. But then, I was like, okay, oh yeah, these have those songs. And I thought, okay, this is it. I'll start here. And again, the only live I could compare it to was, I think, I had a couple other live albums, I think. Like I said, one was Barry Manilow. And, but there was nothing to compare it to as far as a live. I thought, okay, this is what they sound like. This is what a concert's going to be like with Kiss. And when I opened the middle, I like, oh, this is what's going to happen. There's all this, things, World War, III going on stage. I thought, yeah, I'm in. So, and then I had to wait, 2 years before I could actually see them in concert. So.
And then, wow, had they changed by that point?
Super
if you think you go from Alive to Return of Kiss, wow. Oh, way to make the mind pop. All right, so Mark, you've already listed a couple of your top tracks, but here's the first question from this album. What are your 3 favorite live songs from this album and your favorite studio cut? So I'm going to go first because I don't feel like I've talked enough today. Easily, I Stole Your Love is my favorite live cut off this album. Always loved it. Making Love, always loved that live performance. And Detroit Rock City, great opener, just fantastic all the way through. They're actually, every version on this album I think is a good live cut, a good live representation of the performance, but those 3 have always, kind of stand out, at least today. As for favorite song off the studio side, Rocket Ride, it's not even a fight. There's just nothing there. Mark, how about you?
Okay, well, like you, my number 1 favorite of the 3 is I Stole Your Love. I always thought that's one of the greatest opening songs that they've ever had, and it's a shame that they don't use it more often as an opener. I think it's a great opening song. Number 2, I mentioned it already, Ladies Room. I think it's really a good step up from the studio version. I think they really gave it some much needed balls to it in the live version. Excuse me. And the 3rd song is Calling Dr. Love. I've always loved that song, studio or live, and I think that they deliver fantastically well on live album with this. As for my favorite studio song, I mean, I like all of them on there, but I think the song that I find myself always repeating and trying to and listen to more often than the other ones is Larger Than Life. I really think that that's one of Gene's strongest songs that he's written. I think it's just fantastic, and that drum sound is incredible on that.
Nice. Good picks as always. Lonnie, how about you?
I'm going to agree with you on I Stole Your Love. I think it's really fantastic live. And I really like the version of God of Thunder, actually. It's actually my go-to version of God of Thunder. And my 3rd pick for the live version has to be King of the Nighttime World, actually. I really enjoy the live version of that. Again, Mark talk about I Still Your Love, the song they don't do very often. King of the Nighttime World has really been a neglected song as well. They kind of teased us with it a couple years ago and then dropped it after a few shows. But I wish they'd do that song more often. It's really, really classic. So those three are my favorite live cuts off the album. And again, Rocket Ride is my favorite studio track, and it's not even close.
Okay, Ken, talk us down. Give us the reasonable line.
Well, yeah, I did not. I'm the only one that did not choose "I Stole Your Love."
Really?
Just because I think I've heard better live versions of it. I guess. But for me, the songs that I like best, the three, are, I think, "Love Gun's" fantastic on the album. Just a fantastic version of it. "Calling Dr. Love," just like Mark, it's great live. And I'll agree with Lonnie with "God of Thunder." That is the better, sped up version instead of the old, Destroyer kind of plodding kind of version. I like that they played it at a faster tempo, and it worked, and it's pretty cool live with Gene's vocal. As for the studio cut, I'm gonna go with "Larger Than Life" and another Mark match, and because same reasons. It's a great song by Gene. A little different than his normal songs. Again, another one that's kind of outside his normal writing style. And then including the drums, but all the guitar solos, inserted by Bob Kulick were just fantastic, ripping away on those. So that's the studio song I like.
Yeah. Before we get into the what if fantasy side of this discussion, Shout It Out Loud is released as the first single. They delayed, and this is Casablanca Records, delayed issuing a single off the album until they'd had feedback from radio. They really tried to target a song that was going to be successful within, the bounds of also payola, and probably because Aerosmith had success with reissuing Dream On and Walk This Way on both of those. They probably wanted to get this single to have a second chance, second bite at the cherry of becoming a hit, Shout It Out Loud. Do you think that was a good pick for the first single? And if not, what would have been your choice for a more appropriate lead-off single from this live album? Lonnie?
I think it was a good lead-off single that it goes back to Kiss wanting an anthem-type song, really wanted an anthem-type song to be their calling card. They had a lot of success with Rock and Roll All Night as a live song off of Alive 1. And keeping that in mind, maybe a good reason why they said, let's put Tomorrow and Tonight on there as a live version, because it's another anthem type song as well. Not knowing what kind of response it might get, thinking maybe we may still have something here, even though we didn't have, even though it's kind of a throwaway on Love Gun, maybe it could turn into something as a live version like Rock and Roll All Night did. I really don't have a problem with Shout It Out Loud being the single, because you could say we've sat here and said, oh, I love the version of I Stole Your Love on there. Well, I Stole Your Love was off of Love Gun that had just come out not too long since then. Well, do we want to, is that really going to, again, going back to all the albums we released so close together, is that just going to kill Love Gun if we make I Stole Your Love a single off of Alive 2? I don't know. Maybe they think, maybe Destroyer's maybe kind of run its course by now. We can take a song off Destroyer and as a rallying song and make that the single. So I think it's actually a pretty good choice to be the single, even though none of us said it was our top 3 live songs on the album.
Yeah, that was all very logical and well reasoned out. So,
Don't get used to
it. Mark, how about you?
I didn't mind Shout It Out Loud. I mean, I'm trying to remember. Wasn't that the single that had Nothing to Lose on the backside of that? Wasn't it? I don't remember if there was one.
So.
I think it might have had.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
the live version from Alive.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I think thought that was always an interesting sort of single to release. Personally, I think that there were better songs on there that he could have released. If I was going to release a different song and a live song, I think I would have probably did Shock Me, because I think that that's kind of a song that other people really got into. It was a song that was introducing Ace as the singer of the band, and I thought that it was a really strong song, not only in studio but live as well for them. So I thought that might have been a good, strong representation of their live set, having him sing it. But I mean, if they were even going to release, let's say, one of the studio cuts for a single out there, I would have also said Rocket Ride too, because I think that also is a good representation of what Kiss fans wanted to hear. Out of all the songs that were on the studio side, I think that was the most Kiss-like, the one that people said, yeah, that sounds like a Kiss song to me. I think the other ones had elements of it, obviously, but I think that one had the strongest element, funny enough, considering that Ace wrote it.
Yeah. Ken, how about you?
Well, I think Shout Out Loud, yeah, while it's good and kind of, yeah, it's a no-brainer, I think it's too close to the time they released it, you know. They already tried. I know you talked about Aerosmith, but I think Aerosmith, they released the actual studio cut, right? They didn't release a live version of.
Yeah, that's right. On both of those, they were the same version.
Right.
Actually, the Dream On was the full album version, whereas the original one released in '73 had been a edit.
Okay.
Sorry,
well,
minutia.
No, yeah, it's all right.
I love that
That's
stuff.
Good to know. So, you know, I don't know. As for a live cut, you know, releasing that, you know, I'm like Mark. I would have went for just putting out Rocket Ride as a single from this. You know, it is new music, and from that standpoint, and I think that one's maybe the best, you know, catchy type studio cut that they put on here. I don't know, the subject matter might make it through AM radio or not, I don't know, but it'll probably get by better than Larger Than Life. So yeah, I just say Rocket Ride.
Yeah. You know, I think Lonnie kind of talked me out of changing it with his logic of
Sorry.
Shout It Out Loud. And it does kind of make sense. You know, it was the oldest single from the second trio of albums, and it didn't do that well. And paired with the first single off the first trio of albums, it kind of makes sense as a package now. So yeah, it's a good song. Just looking through the track listing, you know, for all the other options, and I don't think any of them would have been good as an A-side option. So they might well have just done Ken's option if not Shout It Out Loud. But I think Shout It Out Loud is a good when you don't have Rock and Roll All Night on there to re-release again for a third time. Shout It Out Loud's probably the closest song to that sort of anthemic material.
Yeah.
And it was right to follow it up with Rocket Ride, one song off the the studio side, and of course they planned a third single, you know, which was going to be All American Man of all things.
Interesting.
Then they bumped it in favor of Strutter 78. So I think they got the single choice right off this album, and you know, it didn't do much again. It went to 54 on the U.S. charts, and in Canada it went to 74. So even Canada couldn't save Alive 2, but that's how pissed off they were at Rockin' in the USA.
Wow.
That's right.
All right.
Canada.
Let's get into the what if, and we're gonna lop off this whole studio side, which should never have been included on a live album. It would have been better on double platinum as a fourth side there. You know what? With that 5-song space now available to you, what existing songs would you keep off Alive 2? What songs would you dump? So let's start with let's take a dump. What songs do you want to dump off Alive 2? You just don't think should be there for whatever reasons. Ken, we'll start with you.
Well, I'm not going to dump any songs, but I am going to add instead. Well, can I add the songs instead? of the fourth side? Am I allowed to do that?
We don't have any rules. You're allowed to do whatever the hell you want
on
the show. It's your show too.
Yeah, looking at that, man. I mean, though I could say, tomorrow, tonight, or whatever. I'm just going to keep it because I always, when I first got it, I thought it was all live. And that's the way it was. Even though, of course, the fourth side wasn't live. So if we got rid of those studio cuts and I added 5 songs to the end, or mixed in wherever in the set list, or this imaginary set list now, the 5 songs I put on there is Take Me is one song. Got Love for Sale, I would have live. Do You Love Me? I put on that. And Hooligan and Love 'Em and Leave 'Em. Those are the 5 songs that I would insert in place of those studio cuts.
Interesting.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
No matter what happens with my list, and I'm still thinking about it, I'm dumping Tomorrow and Tonight. That thing is out of here. That is not fair baseball. That shouldn't be on there. I don't like the song anyway, so it's out of here. Lonnie.
As I mentioned earlier, I would dump Hard Luck Woman and Tomorrow and Tonight. I just don't feel like they belong on there. And in their place, I would have had, we said earlier, was Take Me and Hooligan, because they were performed on the tour. I think it's a better representation of what the band was at that point in time. Getting rid of those 5 studio tracks, I would add Do You Love Me, to mirror what Ken said. I would add Love 'Em and Leave 'Em. And then I would add some stuff. As much as I said I understand why they didn't put a live one stuff on there. If you want a really good snapshot of the band in 1977, I would still put on Firehouse, Deuce, and Rock and Roll All Night, because they were still performing those 3 songs fairly regularly, and I think it would have been an accurate depiction of what the band was. And Julian's shaking his head at me. They weren't performing Deuce at the time, were they? Damn! Julian's just smarter than the rest of us.
I'm going to start posting furious corrections on Facebook. Except mine will probably have typos.
As soon as I said it, you shook your head. I'm like, "Yep, Deuce, they weren't playing that."
I made a similar mistake though, because when we did when we took out the 5 studio songs, I added in 5. But I also dumped off 3 songs as well and added 3. So I dumped 3 and added 8 songs. So I dumped, much like you guys, I dumped off Tomorrow and Tonight. I dumped off Hard Luck Woman, and I also dumped off King of the Nighttime World.
Yeah, you had to kick a Destroyer song out of there somehow.
Yeah, of course, because
well, it hadn't been in the set for years, so that's the one we don't know where it came from.
That's true.
There you go. Now, the first song that I added is the one that Julian would have shook his head if I went before you, is I added Deuce into it, right? But I added Hooligan, I added Let Me Go Rock and Roll, I added Nothing to Lose, I added Firehouse, I added Cold Gin, I added Rock and Roll Night, and I added Black Diamond back.
I like that.
Interesting.
I'm actually, I don't have a problem with anyone adding Deuce back in. You know what? It had been dropped in 76. Deuce. It was time for it to be back in the set. Yeah. And it would have been a hell of a lot better than, maybe 1 or 2 of those picks. Get rid of Tomorrow and Tonight and throw Deuce in, no problem. Again, that's the only song I'm dropping. So I'm going to add stuff in like Take Me, Hooligan, Do You Love Me? It's on that misprint rear cover.
Yes.
Those 3 have got to go on that album. They just have to be there. And then looking at the set list from the Alive 2 tour, you got to have Black Diamond. You got to have Deuce. I'm going with that now because, Lonnie and Mark both are right.
Talk you into it.
Oh, yeah, you guys are totally right. And I don't want to pick Firehouse, and then I want Let Me Go Rock and Roll and Rock and Roll All Night. You got to have a little bit of continuity with the past, even with an overwhelming kind of recreation of, just a all new material live. I do like that concept of having nothing but that, but you do need the encores. I would have kept, how they were going to do the encore section on the Live 2 tour, which went Rock and Roll All Night, Detroit Rock City, Beth, and then Black Diamond. I mean, that's a badass ending. And then I would have started it with I Stole Your Love into King of the Nighttime World. So, and then everything else in the middle, forget it. Just do whatever works with flow as they're sticking this together. And, this is Eddie Kramer. The engineer is much better at taking a jigsaw puzzle and putting it together than like having I don't want to say a real producer, but a producer's producer. You don't need that for a live album, do you, Mark?
No, especially the one that you're probably thinking about. I would keep him far away from a live album, because who knows what he would have done with it. Added orchestras and choirs and who knows other nonsense into it. So but I think that you're right though. I think that the starting of it should have been like I Stole Your Love, and then I put Deuce right after that instead of King of the Nighttime World. But that to me is something that always pops into my head when I think of this time period. It's like, them coming down with those elevators on when they're doing I Stole Your Love. I mean, that to me is like ingrained in my head. Like that's why when I first heard this album and I heard them starting with Detroit Rock City, I was always kind of like, really? Like, why are they starting with that? Like, I always pictured that as the start of their encore all the time. That's what they were doing back then, and Beth and then Black Diamond, right? But I also envisioned how they would normally run out their set, where you would kind of put, God of Thunder near the very end almost, because they would do like that song, with the blood first, then do the drum solo bit, and then after that they would end off with Rock and Roll Night, the big ending there, and then do the encore. So, and everything in between, like you said, it could be anything, but you have all kinds of things you can put in there that we mentioned: Shock Me and Hooligan and Making Love, Christine 16. There's all kinds of songs that they could have done on here, but I think the main thing that makes this album better for me now, with the way I did it now, is the beginning and the ending, like you said, because what they do at the beginning is always etched on people's brains, and forever it'll be that way, like the I Stole Your Love. And also the ending, them ending with something different than Black Diamond, it just seems unimaginable to me.
Un-American too, Mark.
That's right. Very it's like apple pie.
Black more Canadian.
Right. Kind of got it.
Which begs the question, what do Canadians have at their Thanksgiving, and what are Canadians giving thanks for?
We have turkey and stuff like that, and we have.
You just copy the Yanks?
Wow.
Sort of, I guess. Well, we have pumpkin pie, and we have potato salad, and all kinds of different types of stuffing and stuff like that. And what do we give thanks for? Well, I don't know. I guess my parents always gave thanks for coming to Canada from the recently invaded Czechoslovakia at that time when they left there. So they've always been thankful for that. But the cold weather we're not thankful for. It's already starting now, and I'm hating it.
Don't worry, you only got it for like 8 more months up there.
Yeah.
Freaking cold in San Francisco today, 65 degrees. God damn it!
How do you deal with it?
Oh, it's torture with all those earthquakes we've had this week as well. So, So
oh, really?
Yeah, we had a few. There's one over closer to Ken than me. So
I felt it good.
Would any of you change the packaging? I was going to spring that question, and when I was talking about it's such a crappy front cover, and then you open it up and you get wow, it really is one of those situations where I don't think I would change it. I mean, in its own kind of pathetic way, it's the word iconic is overused, but it is cool. And that back cover,
put this on front, maybe,
Yeah, that 4 picture sequence is just perfection, and that layout is just amazing.
Yeah, I mean, you can't even imagine it any other way at this point, can you? I mean, It almost seems like we're so used to that imagery now that just to even imagine it being something different, I mean, it just, you just can't picture it. I mean, hold that cover up again for a second, Ken.
Which one? The front?
The front cover. Yeah, I mean, even though the pictures are kind of small, and I agree, I would have maybe made the pictures just a bit bigger, maybe, and maybe made the Alive 2 font a bit smaller just to make the pictures bigger. But other than that, I don't think there's anything really that I would have changed. I mean, Kiss, that logo looks fantastic, and I mean that's really the thing that's going to catch people's eye, right? When you want to go and buy it, right? So.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a bit on the small side. I think the logo might get lost.
It's without the logo. There you go.
Lonnie,
now just without the logo.
Lonnie, what are your thoughts on? Would you?
I don't know.
Package?
I as much as I like the inside gatefold, I still think you should have had some kind. It's 5:45. Jesus Christ! Some sort of live shot of the band on the front cover in the same vein as Alive. I still think there should have been some kind of live shot of the band. There are some great shots of the band from that time period, and I wish I had the photo that's in the back of my mind right now to show. But I still like a live shot of Kiss. It's Alive too. It should be a live shot of the band on the front cover. I think that would have made more sense. You could still put. I like those 4 pictures of the band that are on the front of the cover. They're also on the back of the cover. Leave them there on the back of the cover. But I think a live shot of the band would have been more impressive for a live album than just Kiss Alive 2 real big. I think a live shot would have been the answer.
Yeah, I kind of agree.
I don't think you go wrong with that. An updated version of the Alive cover.
Correct.
But how do you condense that gatefold down into a single panel?
Yeah, they'll have to use something else where they're jamming on stage or something, and still
Correct,
keep it.
yeah.
And you know what they can do for the big thing? They should have thrown in a poster of that centerfold of the the gatefold.
Yeah.
You could actually buy one back then, wasn't it? The Kiss Live 2 poster.
I used to have one. Unfortunately, I don't have it anymore. But I did have that poster. But that would have been even a more amazing package had they thrown a poster in of that, which they started doing in the following years and solo albums and Dynasty and then Masked, right? So yeah, again though, the cover still is much better than this cover. That much better than this.
There's a lot of
cover.
things better than that.
Yeah. And by the way, this is a pass that they gave out when you at the record store when it came out, so you could go to the meet and greet of for Kiss in a secret location, supposedly. This sticker admits one to the exclusive Kiss party at a secret location. See store for details. But anyway, it was at the Club Oasis in San Francisco back in what was it, 93? July 13th. I don't know if you can read it, but yeah, so that was something that at least I got to do back then. But yeah, that cover. Again, Alive 2 is kind of a special album, so I don't mind the cover so much.
Yeah. I do mind the book. The Evolution of Kiss book.
Yeah.
What's your problem with that? Oh.
Well, the coolest part about it to me back then was that it, this is only after I started getting into vinyl, finding out that it existed. Number one was cool, but the Red Room photos, that was my first interaction with those. Now, for an album that omits everything in basically 1973, 74, 75, and focuses solely on material from 76 and 77, it seems to be a contradiction to have a booklet in there that then covers the whole of the band's history when the album doesn't. So I would have liked them to have just focused, done an updated book, basically, of the original, was a Rock and Roll Party. that came in the originals. Something similar to that just focused on those 2 years and 3 tours in essence, or 2 tours, similar, to the Alive booklet, rather than commingling it in with all of the rest of the history, which, it was nice. I also think that big picture of Paul's horrendous in that book. Come on, Ken.
That's it.
Yeah, I think that is awful.
The kissy face.
I think it's awful.
The semi-pout.
That's his kissy face. Yeah.
But it doesn't look right. I mean, it's like one of those Warring Abbott photos.
The star is on the correct eye.
Well, yeah, that's good. But I just never liked that photo. So
let's see the Ace one there, Ken.
Yeah, the Ace.
The Ace one's good.
You know what's interesting is when you look at him when you look at him there in that picture, and then you look at the back cover of the album cover. I'll put up the back cover of the album for a second. Like it looks like he has like completely different colored hair. It's only because of the lighting, obviously, but it looks like he has like orange hair almost in that photo. When I first saw that picture, I used to think that he had red hair when I saw that when I was really young, right?
Yeah. I mean, it also bothered me in the book that you have. I'm just flipping through the book here on the website. You've got Paul from the Red Room. You got Ace from that looks like Fillmore or something. There's no kind of continuity between the pictures. Each one of them from like 73 is not from the same photo shoot. It's just like cobbled together. I don't like it. I also thought the fucking tattoos pissed me off because I left that sheet, the protective sheet off one of them, and left it in the album, and they've rubbed off in the heat onto the.
Oh no!
Onto the center rings. I mean, and I was so pleased at that time to have found one that still had that intact. So, I think they could have done better on the inserts than they did. It was just, I mean, I know they were going for younger fans, so little rub-on tattoos. I mean, I can't say the word anymore. But you all know which word I was thinking, so yeah. All right, let's wrap this one up, I think. So, Alive 2. I think the overall opinion of this album is pretty positive. It was an introduction to a lot of the catalog for some of us. It was, if it's Ken's first album, that's a winner.
Mm-hmm. It's a winner.
It does have its high points, and those 5 songs I still think it would be better on double platinum, and that this should have just been a pure live album. And compilations you can get away with, or studio compilations you can get away with adding new tracks to. But I guess that's it. Next week we're gonna talk about a little bit more of the Alive 2 era, and hopefully have some fun on that episode. But I think for now, that's just our quick recap of Kiss Alive 2 on whatever day you celebrate it.
Sorry.
Whose phone was it?
Mine.
Well, obviously Tickle Lonnie. All right, let's leave it there. We thank you for joining us. So from Mark, from Ken, Lonnie, and myself, thanks, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Thank you for spending time listening to the KissFAQ podcast today. All sales are final. There are no refunds. If you'd like, look us up on Facebook or come over to the KissFAQ message board and discuss the topic we've broadcast today. Don't forget to rate us on iTunes, Spreaker, or wherever you've listened to the show. We hope you'll join us again.